Hello, and welcome to another Digital Photo Mentor YouTube live stream with photo editing tips. Coming to you from a sunny Edmonton. Sorry, David, I had to do it. It's not often that Edmonton gets better weather than anybody, so I'll celebrate that whenever I can. If you're tuning in for the first time, welcome, Manfred. I know you've just joined, so thanks for finding the link and getting here. And if there's anybody else that's new, please introduce yourself in the chat. We love to make conversation and get to know everybody personally. And of course, if you are returning and you've been here before, welcome back. We always love to see you. Let me just change my screen here. If you would like to participate in submitting your photos, we'll give you the theme for not next week because I got something special coming for next week, but the future weeks. If you'd like to submit any of your photos to be edited by me during the live stream, this is the link to do so. digitalphotomentor.com/live. Rob is my husband slash IT guy or webmaster, and he's going to be putting links for you in the chat. So check the chat, and he'll be providing links. Anything that I mention, he will have the links for you in the chat. Holly's here. Holy Crow. That's your new nickname. All right. Welcome, everybody. We've got some new people. I mentioned that Manfred is here. I think that you saw me in one of the Luminar groups on Facebook. So thanks for joining. Welcome. You'll see how it goes in a moment. And a few people like Stephanie and Karen that have other commitments today may be catching the beginning and then join in, watch the replay later. So I'm sorry that it's rainy in Ottawa. David, let's see. Who else is here? Leanne from Innisfail. Deb from Alaska, as usual. Lee, St. Louis. Welcome, everybody. So I'm going to get started, and I'm going to give you a little quick sneak at what's going to happen next week. So next week, we're going to stay with Saturday, and I'll tell you why, because I'm going to have two very special guests. Let me just call up some of my photos here. Next week, we're actually going to be hosting some special guests from none other than Skylum. So this group here was the group that I went to Madeira, Portugal with last week. This is the team from Skylum, and we had a fantastic week photographing around the island and meetings with the Skylum team. So let me just turn on my cursor here. These are some pretty important people in the company. This guy with his thumb out looks like he's hitchhiking is Ivan or Ivan. He is the CEO. Unfortunately, he's not going to join us, but this lady in the middle here is Juliana. She's the CMO, and this fellow next to her in the hoodie or bunny hug, as those of you in Saskatchewan would call it, is Dima, and he is the chief engineer of the actual software. So they are going to be joining us here next week live. So make sure that you share the link for joining next week. And I have a special link for you to submit questions to them, because we want to make sure that we make the best of their time. So go to that link. If you could provide the link in the chat, please, Rob. I'll mention this again later in the live. But if you'd like to ask questions directly at the Skylum team, anything goes. What you'd like to see, what's your favorite thing, something, a feature request, whatever. We've got a form that you can fill out, and I will be collating the questions and asking them next week right here at the same time. So special just for Digital Photo Mentor subscribers and followers here on YouTube. All right, so I'm going to get started with some images. And today we are doing Flora and Fauna. So I've got, I don't know if he's considered a Flora or a Fauna, but this is Olivier. He's a French photographer, and he was with us in Madeira. Yeah, okay. Logo. I will take care of that. There we go. All right, so let me get into the flora and the fauna. So we had some great animal images submitted. I've got some of yours, Karen, and I know you said you couldn't stick around very long. So maybe we can do yours first. So you may have noticed that we used one of your images of the lion as the featured image for this week's live stream. So I've already done some editing on this one, and I did it all in Lightroom, and I want to show you. Let me just change my background back here. This is the color I usually use. So by the way, I'm using Lightroom and Luminar to do demonstrations today based on the program that you request for your image. Okay, so the one that you use the most, that's the one that I will edit your image in. Okay, so I've already done some editing here. I'm just going to uncrop it because I cropped it for the featured image. But the original was like this. So as you could see, there was lots of grasses and things sticking out, and it was fairly dark. So I did a bunch of work to solve some of those issues. So let me show you how I did that. Right. Karen, you use Lightroom and Luminar. So I did this one in Lightroom, and maybe I'll do one of your others in Luminar, because I've also worked on the cheetahs, and I'll show you that as well. Right. So I'm just going to make a virtual copy. So to do that, you can right click and choose virtual copy. And I'm doing that because I don't want to take away the edits that I've got already done. So I'm just going to make a virtual copy and work on that one. So I'm going to reset it so you can see what we're starting with. Okay. When you are working with any image and any editing program, you want to make sure that you have the histogram open for viewing. If you're in Luminar, that's an option under the view menu to hide it or show it. And here it's just a little triangle at the top that you can hide it or show it. Okay. So I always use the histogram and recommend that you use the histogram for checking your exposure. Okay. So the first thing I did is to fix that problem of it being underexposed. And I wanted to mention this, Karen, because I looked at a few of your images in terms of what their shooting information was. Let me go back here. Okay, so this one here was shot in shutter priority. Okay, and the shutter that you chose was 1/640th of a second. Okay, the ISO was not on automatic, I'm assuming. And what happened was, when you are in shutter priority, the camera will take a bad exposure, as you can see. Okay, so in this case, it maxed out to the biggest aperture that it could based on the lens that you were using. And because you weren't on auto ISO, it couldn't increase the ISO. So you ended up with a dark exposure. If you want to shoot in shutter priority, I generally don't use shutter priority, almost never, except when I'm panning. If you're going to shoot in shutter priority, make sure that you're using auto ISO, and then that problem would have been solved here. Okay. But for stuff like this that's not moving quickly, and even sports photographers use aperture priority, okay? Because you're going to get a better exposure every time. So there's my tip for exposure. All right, so to fix this, right, I'm not going to grab the exposure slider. Right? I'm going to do that part way, and that is adjusting the midtones. So remember, when we are adjusting the exposure slider, we're working on the midtones. Okay. If you don't believe me, watch what happens when I go over the histogram in the middle here. Okay. So this is the midtones, black over here, white over here, midtones in the middle. If I click and drag here, which slider is being affected? Exposure. Okay. So you can click on the histogram and adjust it this way. So I'm only going to go a little bit with the exposure. Then I'm going to use my shift double click trick. It's a tongue twister. Okay, so what you want to do is hover over the word whites, hold down the shift key, double click. Okay, now it's set what's called the white point and then the black point. Okay, so I'm going to do one edit in Lightroom, and then I'm going to do a different image in Luminar. So we alternate. Okay. So what this has done, and I'm holding down the Alt Option key, and that will show me any clipping warnings, is it's put the sliders for whites as high as it goes without clipping. Can you see that? If I go further, it starts to clip. And the same with blacks. There's a little bit of black clipping, but I'm actually going to clip more. I'm going to take it a little bit farther. Right? So look at the big difference here. Okay? So all I did, oops, aha, I need to reset my history. Okay, I'm going to set this to the before. Okay, so my before and after is showing me the wrong thing because it's showing me the after of the other version. Okay, so before and after of just these three sliders, right? So really quickly, you can adjust the exposure, right? But I've only gone to plus 0.5 on the exposure. If I don't do the whites and the blacks, I have to go a lot higher with the exposure, up to 1.5, right? So do your whites and your blacks, and then keep the exposure slider to the minimal, because the farther you take it, the more grain you're going to get. Okay, so by limiting your ISO to 500, you ended up with a dark exposure. If you had shot at 1,000 or 2,000 ISO, yes, you're going to get some noise, but you will on an underexposed image as well. Okay, if I zoom in here, I don't know if you could see that. See, it's pretty noisy, and that's only 500 ISO. And that has to do with the underexposure. Okay. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to warm it up a little bit, because lines should be brown, right? It looks a little blue, like so. And then playing with the magenta just a little bit. So the color looks pretty good. All right, now that I've got the general exposure set, I'm going to add an edge vignette. And this is a preset that I've created. So if you're interested in my Lightroom presets, Rob, if you could please post a link to our Lightroom presets, right? You haven't learned this since I did these. Which one is that, Karen? Okay, so I just put a quick vignette on. And if you don't have the presets, you just go to the effects panel, and that's what is creating the vignette here. Okay. As for getting rid of some of these sticks and things, right? Whenever you're dealing with stuff that you need to clone out, I want to zoom in a little bit, but not too far. There we go. Come on. There we go. Okay. I'm going to use the cloning and healing tool in here. And I'm going to use the first one, which is the new thing in Lightroom, which is the content aware cloning tool. Okay. Or spot removal. Right. So I'm not sure if you can see how big my circle is, my mouse cursor here. Right. So it's kind of coming and going. I'm not sure why. I want it just bigger than the stick. And I'm only going to go part way here. And its job is to try and fill it in, right, with what it thinks is going to look good. That actually looks pretty good, right? If you're not happy with it, you can click refresh. I like what it's done, except there's this part here that sort of doesn't match anymore. So I'm just going to get rid of that one as well. And that one I am going to refresh. And all it does is just fills it with something different, okay? Now I'm just going to move the image and do the next section of the stick. So I generally wouldn't do this whole thing in one sort of pass. I would do a couple of passes, okay? You'll find you'll get better results if you don't try and clone a large thing all at once. And that applies in Luminar as well when you're using the erase tool, okay? So the erase tool would do the same job here, and it does an excellent job. Okay, so now I'm going to do this stick. So I'm going to do the top part first. And I'm just letting Lightroom do its job and fill in the bits. Okay. That one, maybe a little bit refresh. I think I missed part of it. Now notice I can't overlap this one. So you have to go below it and paint up into it. So once you have one that needs to overlap, okay, I want to make sure his fur looks okay. There, that looks better. Okay, now this one here that's kind of coming out of his nose, I want to get rid of this one as well, but same thing. I don't want to do the whole thing at once. So I'm going to do a piece of it, see how it does. That looks good. And then I'm going to do another little piece, see how that one goes. I'm looking for, does it blend, and can I see that something's been done? Okay, that looks pretty good. I'm going to get a smaller brush, and I'm just going to go right in there in his whiskers. Right, That looks good. Now I can do the bottom part like so. Okay, so turning that off, let's see the difference? We got rid of that big stick. Okay, I'm also going to get rid of these ones over here, or I might choose to crop the image a little bit. So if I crop it like so, I can get rid of these things on the left and not worry about it so much. Okay, I might get rid of this one as well. So this is kinds of things where it takes your image from good to great, okay, when you're paying attention to these kinds of details. Now this stick here that's going over the lion might be trickier. So I'm going to try the first section here. This is one where you might have to go to Photoshop, okay? I was able to do a pretty decent job with Lightroom previously, and I'm just, using the refresh. You might have to go to the healing tool instead, right? So I want to try and match the fur a little better. Let me feather that. Okay, so feather is how soft is the edge of the brush. That looks a little better. Okay, again, I need to make sure I get all of the dark parts. And when you're using this tool, when you're using the healing tool, you have to choose where to place the source. Okay, so I'm choosing the source like so. And I'm just doing it little by little here. This one might be tricky because I need white fur, and I don't know that I have any white fur to pull from. Right. Oh, that looks pretty good. See how that matched up nicely with his paw there? All right, let's do this section here. This one I might just draw a smaller circle. I'm going to go a little smaller and then just move it down, okay? Now we're getting there. See how I just build on it slowly? I'm going to do another one about the same size. Build on that slowly. And let's work over here. Get a little more white on his fur. And now we're sort of getting something that looks pretty darn good, right? I'm just going to try and match up with his paw here. Oh, I'm getting that other stick, so I don't want that. I'm going to get rid of this stick first. Okay, so whenever you're doing this kind of detailed cloning, have patience, right? Have patience and do it little by little. Okay, so that looks pretty good. Let's take a look at how it looks overall. Okay, so backing out. There's our before and after. And the fur looks pretty realistic, right? Now, once we're done the cloning, and if you're not able to do that with Lightroom, take it into Photoshop and you have more tools there. And you can use layers and make sure that you do non-destructive editing. So if you go to Photoshop, make sure that you do this workflow. Right click, choose edit in, and open as a smart object. Okay. Then anything that you do in terms of cloning, do it on a blank layer. Okay. So do your cloning on a blank layer and just make sure that it's set to all layers and your editing will be non-destructive. It'll save you a PSD, come back into Lightroom, and you can do any other editing you want to do. Okay. The only other thing that I might do here is go into the HSL panel. Here you can do things like shifting the color. So if I want to darken the green, okay, I can adjust the luminance of green and that darkens that background, right? Yellow as well. And then orange is the lion's fur, okay? Like so. I might do a quick subject select. So I might do a mask. And it did a pretty good job of picking him because I want to give him more texture. So I'm going to increase the clarity and the texture, right? And see what that's doing, right? If I turn that off, see how, look at his fur and his face. It's bringing out the texture and the fur and him, okay? And we can also do, I'm just going to name this lion. The background, if we want to blur the background even more, okay, now I don't want to blur this part in the front here, okay, so I'm going to subtract. I'm going to make sure that he doesn't have the lion selected, and then I'm going to subtract a linear gradient and just make sure I don't have this corner here. Because I want this front grass that he's sitting on to be sharp. Okay, so I'm going to go about like that. So what I'm going to do now is lower the clarity and the texture. And you can also lower dehaze. Now it tends to lighten everything. So you can then lower the exposure. Right? But see what it's doing is basically minimizing that background a little bit. Okay? A little too much dehaze, I think. It's minimizing and darkening that background, right? Even more. So all of these things are designed to make the subject stand out. Now that I'm looking at it, I think his face is a little dark. So I'm just going to do a radial gradient right about there. I just want to brighten this part of his face. So I think that's shadows. See that? Okay, so shadows and a little bit of exposure. And that brightens his face up. Okay, so there's our full before and after. And how long did that take me? 10 minutes. Right, so you can do pretty good cloning in Lightroom now with the tools that we've got in the new version. And I just updated my Lightroom yesterday, and I know that there's now new things in the masking as well. So let me just show you as an example. Okay, so this one here, which is the background, we now actually have curves, right? So if I wanted to affect curves, I can do that in the masking as well. This is totally new in Lightroom. Okay. One quick mention. We will be changing to our summer schedule in 2 weeks. I kept it on Saturday for another week so that we could get the Skyrim team here on the 6th because, of course, it's much later in Europe. So Juliana is in Lisbon and Dima's in Ukraine. So we need to make sure that we do it early enough that we can get them on with us. All right, so there is our little lion cub. He's very cute, very cute. Before I go to the next one and do a Luminar one, which I did this horse in of Sheila's, I just want to show you what I did with the cheetah. Okay, so I did a couple of edits with this one. And this is the same. Now, this is the opposite problem, Karen. This one here was shot at aperture priority, but you're at f10. So the problem with f10 is your shutter speed was slow, okay? So I think sometimes what I see in my workshops and the tours is people choose a smaller aperture like f8 or for 11, thinking that you get more in focus. But what happens is you end up with a slower shutter speed. Now with this lens, okay, do you remember what we talked about with the minimum shutter speed that you want to use? You need to have 1 over the focal length. And in this case, let's see, what did you shoot it at? 300 millimeters. So you need to have at least 1 over 300 to keep this sharp as a handheld image, okay? So this kind of image, I would have shot wide open at f5.6, which is the maximum you have for this lens, and you would have got a faster shutter speed, right? See if you can also set your ISO to auto on this camera and set a minimum shutter speed, okay? So if you could set your minimum shutter speed to 250, you'll eliminate some of the problems. So let me zoom in here and show you what the issue is, right? We've got a lot of blur. So not only is the image blurry, but the cat moved, right? It looks like there's some focus here, but not so much, right? So the focus is almost behind the cat. So be very careful where you place your focus dot as well, okay? And it's a little bit noisy as well, okay? So what I did was, just to show you as a comparison, I did one edit, as you can see, in Luminar Neo, using the tools in Neo to sharpen. And I did one in Photoshop, and I invoked Topaz Sharpen. So let me show you these two side by side, because you might be surprised. Of these two, which one do you think is the better one? Which one do you think is going to do a better job of sharpening the blurry image? Topaz or Luminar Neo? Tell me in the chat. Right? Which one do you think is going to win? And I'm going to zoom in here so that you can see. All right. That's maybe zoomed in a little too much. Okay, so the one on the left is Topaz, and the one on the right is Luminar. Luminar wins. What can I say? I used the super sharp new extension, which is a little bit hit and miss, to be honest, but it worked fairly well on this one on low. And then I used the detail slider. Okay. So Sheila says, I like Neo, but my head says it should be Topaz, right? Results don't lie. Okay. If you want to see how I did this, I will do this one for you real quickly. Okay, so I'm going to take this one. Let me just warm this up a little bit here because the color is a little bit cool. And I'm going to add a vignette. Okay, so I've done some basic editing from the original, which was a little blue as well. Okay, so we're going to go from here. We're going to go from here. And let me see if I can find, okay, it's got the subject selected. I'm just going to brighten the subject a little bit. There we go. Okay, so I selected the subject already, and I think I added a little bit of clarity and texture here. Okay, so Lightroom's sharpening is not great, I have to say. Okay, so we're going to take this one into Neo. So now we've got good exposure and so on. Let's take this one into Neo. So I'm going to go directly. If I want to do a non-destructive editing, I would go into Photoshop as a smart object and then take it to Neo from there. Okay? In the essence of speed and time today, I'm just going to go directly into Neo. Okay. Now I have it come back as a TIFF in Adobe RGB color space. If you're not familiar with any of those things, I talk about that in an article on my website about Lightroom preferences. So maybe you could share a link to that, Rob. So Lightroom preferences, I also talk about that in our Lightroom course. So you could share that as well. Something else. Okay, so a video that I did yesterday is Luminar Neo 1.9. If you have not updated, make sure that you do that because guess what we have now? We have undo and redo, full version, sort of. Okay, and this is definitely something I'm going to be asking Dima next week because I had conversations with him in Madeira and I gave him a huge list of suggestions and things of what I would like to see changed and improved in Luminar. And that was part of what we were doing in the meetings there. Besides off shooting, beautiful locations, we were also meeting with the team so they could get our feedback on the software itself. And a lot of us, the partners that were invited to this, there was, I think, 10 or 12 of us, we basically all said, Adobe's never invited us anywhere. So why, this is great. Like I've never had a conversation with the CEO and CMO of Adobe. They don't know I exist. So this is one of the reasons why I love working with Skylum is because I have direct contact with the team personally, and I know them personally, and now I've met many of them face to face. So this is what I like. So if you haven't updated to 1.9, make sure you do that now, okay? So what I did in here is I first tried the sharpen. Okay, so that's the super sharp extension. Okay, and I tried it on low universal. Okay, now this one takes a little bit of time to run, but if you've used Topaz sharpen, you'll know that it takes forever as well. Okay. Why is somebody giving me an angry emoji on Facebook? Please give us a thumbs up if you are enjoying this video. So while this is happening, I'll just ask you guys to do that now. If you're watching and enjoying, make sure you subscribe and give this video a thumbs up. Reminder, while that's happening, we will have the Skylum team on next week, same time on this live. That is the link to the form where you can submit questions that will be going to the Skylum team. I will be doing like interview with them, but you can come and ask them questions live as well, right? Okay, so now let's zoom in here and see how it's done, right? So let's take a look. Look at this cat here, okay? I think it did a pretty good job on this guy's face or girl's face. This one it's having trouble with, but Topaz did as well. No matter what I did, even in Topaz, it would not sharpen this part of the nose, right? I could try motion blur and see if that does any better. So there's two like modalities in the super sharp extension: universal, which is like general blur, and motion blur if your subject was moving, okay, and you want to sharpen it up. Let's see if we have any questions. Sheila says, all the hype for Topaz editing software, every other ad is for this preset. Yeah, exactly. They do lots of advertising. And I find that more and more Luminar is on at least on par with Topaz. Okay, look at this. Look at this, guys. This looks really good. Right? Now keep in mind that I can also mask this. Right? So if I want to just sharpen them, right, I can just mask it. We could try mask AI, but honestly, I think I would just brush it in and leave my brush at 100%, make it a little bit bigger so I don't have to paint so much, and just mask it into the cats, okay? Because I don't want to sharpen the grass. Okay, so now when I zoom in, look at that. That's pretty good. That's pretty good, I have to say, right? Now, if that doesn't do the trick, right, or you don't have the extension, this is what I was using before the extension even existed. Go to the details panel and bring the small details slider up. Look what happens. Okay, now you're going to get some artifacts and you're going to get some noise. Okay, you can do sharpen here, but small details. Look what a great job it does on this one that nothing else was working on. Okay, so what I might do is just mask it into his nose here a little bit. Okay, because I want to have this sharpening appear on this cat, but I don't want to end up with a whole bunch of noise over there. So look at what a nice job this is doing here. Okay. See that? It's picking up this sharpening here. Okay. And maybe even the fur. Let's try the fur. Not too bad. I think it's mostly the face, but it's doing a really good job, right? That looks good. Okay, now, of course, we've got a little bit of noise, so we can go back up and use the noiseless. Oops. And it is suggesting low, so I'm going to run that. Skylum aim for customer satisfaction. Yes, they certainly do. And like I said, they one of the things that I've come to realize is they are very much about relationships. They're doing workshops now, and as a matter of fact, you can actually win a trip to Iceland on their next workshop. I'm going to send you, if you're on my email list, I'm going to send you some information on how you can possibly win a trip to Iceland, right? But they're very much about relationships, not only with people like me who are as a partner and ambassador, but people like you who are the actual customers and users of the software. Okay. All right, let's see how noiseless is done here. It's sharpening more than anything. I might do middle. Let's try a little bit more. Right. And again, I can mask it if I find that it's doing too much. Okay. I'm not sure it's doing anything, to be honest. So I'm going to undo that. And I also find there's noiseless or noise reduction here in develop. Okay, so you can do this. That's actually working pretty good there. Okay. So look at the difference. That's what we started with from Lightroom, and that's what we got now. So I have a feeling that this is actually even better than the last one that I did. And while I'm in here, I am going to pull down the color. This is another thing that Lightroom still doesn't have. So even though they've added curves now to masking, I can't mask the HSL tool. Okay, and I've been asking for that forever. Oops, not hue. Okay, so I wanted to lower the luminance of orange and yellow, and you'll see what I'm doing in a minute here. See how it's darkening that rock behind them, okay? Because I'm going to mask it just to that area, okay? So I'm going to use a radial gradient, and then I'm going to invert it. Actually, no, I'm not going to invert it. I want to just like that. Okay, so wherever the red is where it's showing up. Okay, that's where it's applying. Okay, so I don't want to affect the cats, just the background. So see what that's doing? It's in effect vignetting them and toning this rock down. Okay. So I'm going to take this back to Lightroom. I'm going to show you some images here real quick, Sheila, because I actually took some fabulous images, and I'm not even a landscape photographer, but I kind of pretended to be one for a week. Okay, now where are we? Now I've got a whole bunch of different versions here. Okay, so let me do these two again, which are side by side. So the PSD, remember, is the topaz one. And this one here that I just did, which is called Edit, is the Luminar one. Okay, so that's the one we just did. I think the Luminar one is much better, right? Look at this face of this cat here, right? I think it did a much better job. And if we want to compare to this one as well, right? Here's the first Neo edit that I did. Looks like I went a little bit farther with this one in terms of details, right? So I did a better job on the nose here, but I did a better job on that one. Okay? So overall, I think Luminar won that challenge. Okay? The next one I want to show you is what I did with this one of Sheila's with the horse. Okay, so here we have this horse and foal in the field, and it's a little bit bright and a little bit, overly saturated, but the exposure is good, so we can fix that. So this is what I did in Lightroom. Okay, so I punched up the color a little bit, cropped it in because I didn't like the space behind them. So I kind of wanted to even out the space behind and in front. I'd like more space in front, but the fence was bothering me. Right, now I'm going to show you what I did, and then I'm going to show you how I did this. Okay, are you ready for it? I'm going to go full screen just to blow your socks off. Are you ready? I took out the fence, right? And it was much easier than you think. Now, I didn't do a perfect job, but I used the background removal in Luminar to do it. So let me show you how I did that. So I'm going to start with this one again. Okay. And I'm going to take it directly into Neo. Now, if I wanted to be able to edit it again, actually, I'll go into the Smart Object in Photoshop. I'll take it to Photoshop first. Okay. You did send images. I think you sent these a while ago, Sheila, but I haven't done animals for a while. So I hang on to them. And I thought this one was a great one to demonstrate because I was thinking in my head, okay, which ones have some things that would be really cool to show? And I thought this would be one of them. All right, so let me just get out of there. All right. So here I am in Photoshop now. And once we're in Photoshop, you could see that this little thing here, this little icon, I don't know if you can see that on the screen. Is that visible? This little icon in the bottom of the layer thumbnail indicates that it is a smart object. Okay, so now all I have to do is go apply a filter, okay, and find the one that I want. So I'm going to apply Luminar Neo as a filter. So what that will do is it's going to open Neo from here. So it's like a step in the middle, right? But now when I save from Neo, it'll go back to Photoshop, and from Photoshop back to Lightroom, and from there I can get back here again, okay? So I can get back to any of the steps along the way. So what I want to do with this one is I need to do a background removal, okay? So I'm going to start with, you go to Layer Properties, okay? And masking, and this is one of the extensions. Okay, so you need to have the extensions to do this. If you don't have the extensions and you want to upgrade your package, I would recommend going with the monthly pro package and using our discount code. And I'll put that on the screen here. I need to edit this because it's now changed. So our discount code is Luminar Neo discount code is DPM10. So if you could put a link to purchase Luminar Neo in the chat, please, Rob, and the discount code is DPM10 for 10% off. Okay, so if you go with the Pro subscription plan, you will get all the extensions. Okay, so you'll find background removal in here. So you just have to run it, and it's going to analyze the image and look for the subject. Okay. And I did this once already, obviously, and it did a really good job of finding the horses. From there, what I did was I edited it, and I'll show you how to do that. Okay. So once you get here, okay, actually, let me just see if I can choose natural ground. No, I'm going to go with just that. Okay, I'm going to choose remove. And then once it does the removal, then we can edit the mask. Okay, and I'm going to show you that. Okay, so now to edit the mask, you need to go down here to refinements brush. And what it shows, I'm just going to get myself off the screen here for a moment. What it shows, I'm going to go full screen here. So I'm coming off. Is anything that's blue here is considered the background. Anything that's orange is the subject. And the transparent parts is the transition. So you can use these three brushes to indicate to Luminar what you want to be each item. Okay, so now I want to keep all this grass at the bottom. Okay, so I'm just going to literally paint that in and tell Luminar that is part of the object. Okay, so I'm going to go all the way up in here so I get all these little holes. Okay, so basically I want all the part of the grass that is in focus. Okay, still doesn't want to get all of that. Oh, I'm doing transition. See, I'm like, why is it going transparent? So I screwed up. I need to paint it with the object brush. There we go. See, I screwed up that. Okay, now it's going to look a whole lot different. So when I do it with the transition brush, it's looking for transparency. Okay, so look at that. Okay, see how that is working really good. Okay, so I want to make sure to get the ear of the mother and all these bits in here. Okay, so to see it, just click this brush closed. Okay, I'm going to go over the tail. I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. And this is where you want to use the transition brush around bits that are transparent like this. Okay, so over the tail. Okay, so I make sure I get all the hairs of the tail. Okay, not hair of the dog. That's a whole different thing. By the way, where's my hockey fans? I'll come back on the screen in a minute. I'm wearing my Oilers shirt today because it's game 6 of our playoff game, and we could take the LA Kings tonight in the first series. So go into an Oilers game watch party. Okay, I'm just going to make this part of the background. Okay, so you're training Luminar as to what is your image and what is the subject and what is not. Okay, that's what the transition brush and these edge brushes are doing. Okay. Now, I'm not super concerned about it because I'm going to be putting green behind it as well. Okay. Now, the image that I'm going to be adding, I'm going to go a little bit higher on the grass here. I want to go right up to the fence. Okay. And maybe even a little bit higher here. So I want all the grass except getting that fence. Okay. So it's starting to go out of focus. Okay. Like so. Now the edges are not blending so well, so I'm just going to go along the edge of the grass with the transition brush. See how it then faded the grass so it's not a hard edge, so it makes it softer, right? Like so. Now I'm happy with that, okay? I'm going to go in with the erase tool and get rid of some of these grasses as well, but for now, I'm happy with that. Yeah, this one bugs me, so I'm going to erase this grass. See that? Works just as well as the tools in Lightroom. Right? Like so. Okay. So we can get rid of some of these other grasses as well, but I want to show you how to add this background image. So now that we've got it cut out, we can add a layer. And what I did was I went to unsplash.com and I found an image of grass. Let me just see if I can find it. And I searched for grass. Okay, here, let me bring this up on my screen here. So if you don't have Unsplash, you can use Unsplash or Pixabay. These are royalty-free stock images. Okay, so I searched for grass and I wanted a landscape image. And then I just found, I think I used this one. Okay, so I wanted one that was all grass and that went out of focus. Okay, so I'm going to add this one as a layer. Okay, so there's the grass. And it's going to add it on top, okay, which is not what I want, obviously. And I only want it from there up. So I'm actually going to stretch this one, right, so that the out of focus parts cover the image that I want covered. Okay, so I'm just stretching it, okay. And then all we have to do is switch the order of the layers. So we can just drag this one down or the horses up. So we just drag this one down. Right? It's taking a moment, and there it is. Okay, so now I can see that I still need to stretch this one a little bit more. Okay, so I want to make it a little bigger and then just move it down. So I only want the parts that are out of focus. Okay, now this is something that I talked to Dima about, is when we make something bigger, it kind of, once the little handles go off the edge, we can't reach them anymore. So I already talked to him about that. So see how I just want green and I don't want it to look like the grass is sharp. Okay? Now, can you see it's not matching up so great because the color is off? Okay, so I'm going to use, first of all, structure to lower the structure and blur it even more a little bit. And I only want it on this bottom part here. So I'm going to just do a linear gradient to blur the bottom part here, this part here. Okay. And then I'm going to go into color, lower the saturation a little bit. And I'm trying to match these two greens. Okay. So I might shift the hue a little bit. So a little bit this way. And then I'm just going to lower the saturation. Okay. We're getting closer. That looks a little better. And then I still think the yellow is too yellow. So we're going to lower that. You'll notice that grass has a lot of yellow as well as green. So when you're adjusting the saturation of grass, make sure you do yellow as well. Okay. Now I just want to blur this grass again. So keep in mind, we're on this grass layer. Okay. So anything I do on here, for example, if I turn this black and white, okay, you can see that I'm only on the bottom layer, and that's how much of it is showing. Okay, so I'm only on this bottom layer. Now I want to blur it a little bit more, and I know that either Mystical or Glow will do a good job of that. Okay, it's definitely too saturated. Let's try Orton effect. Aha, there we go. Okay. See what that's doing? Let's just darken it. Now we've got something that looks like it blends a little bit better. And I just want it on this lower part again. Okay, like so. So it's only affecting this section. See how it's blurring this part here. Okay. Now if I'm not happy with the blend, it's kind of wonky over here. All I have to do is go back to the horse image, go back to the background removal, and just blend the mask again. Okay. Any questions coming up? I'm sure there's lots of questions about this. Let me see how we're doing here. Goilers. Did I mean weed? I'm not sure what you mean. When I remove the background, does it automatically make the horses as a transparency file then? The background is transparent, Holly. If I want just the horses with the background transparent to use on another image, I would have to export it as a PNG. So I could do that, but instead of doing that, I just added the grass as a layer here. Okay. So if I wanted to use the horses as a different image somewhere else, yes, I would have to export them. Okay. Okay, so now I'm gonna go back in here and just refine this mask again. See, now it's kind of got starting over again because it did not do my mask that I wanted. So I've got to remask all of this. So that's kind of another thing that I'm going to be talking to Dima about, because when I do remove background, I should be able to get back to the mask and just edit it. So that's something that I didn't mention. Okay, so let's do that. And then I'm just going to do a transition. Right, transition on the tail. And I'm just looking to fade this grass a little bit. Right? I want it to sort of be a little bit more blended with the other image. So I'm looking for bits of transparency in here, like so. Okay. So I'm just trying to fake it so that it goes well with the other image. All right. See that? Still looks too green to me. Still looks too green. So I'm going to come back in here. What I could try actually is a LUT, because I know that there's actually some nice LUTs that kind of make things a little bit more brown tone. See what these are doing? Ooh, sepia is kind of nice, actually. That just shifts the color a little bit. Right? And I think I want to darken, so that is going to be develop. Okay, remember, we're only affecting this part. Okay, so just darken ever so slightly, like so. Okay, now we can take it back to Lightroom, or I can come in here and do a little more erasing. Okay. I want to get rid of this stick as well. Let's get rid of that stick. These ones here. So the ones that are kind of touching the horse. When you come up close to the subject like this, be careful. You don't want to overlap, because that's when you'll get into some trouble with the erasing, usually. Okay? So don't touch the horse. You want to keep it separate. So let me just get the tops. And this one over here. Okay, so I'll show you what I mean. Okay, so I'm just going to do this part, see how it does. Okay, so right off the bat, it did some weird stuff. So I'm just going to restore it. And I'm going to start here. Okay, so I'm not touching the edge. Same thing here. I'm just going to the edge of the horse's leg. Okay, and then I'm going to get these other bits over here. See, it's putting fur into the grass, which we don't want. We don't want furry grass. Okay. Now we're getting somewhere. So just do little by little, right? Don't expect to do one big swash and it does a magic job, right? Do it little by little like this, click by click, okay? Still got fur in the grass. Now we got more fur in the grass. So I'm going to fix that another way. Okay. We can use the clone tool here in Luminar. I'm just going to grab something from here and then clone right there. Something like that. And I'm going to, see, I did undo. I did Command Control Z and I undid. So look at that. A little bit less soft. There we go. Okay, let's try that again. I want the edge a little bit sharper so I'm not cloning over his leg. There we go. Something like that. Okay, when you're cloning, you want to always keep changing where your source is coming from, because the challenge is you end up with duplicates. You end up with repeat patterns, and that's what you want to watch out for. Okay, so I'm going to apply this and come back to Lightroom. Okay. Create a background for a 7-day challenge. Well, if it's a challenge, interesting. Let me think about that, Holly. Yeah, maybe we can come up with some kind of a challenge. Okay, now it brings us back to, I went back to Lightroom, but it brings us back to Photoshop. Okay, so now you can see that Luminar Neo is applied as a smart filter. Okay, so all I want to do from here, don't do save as, just do save. Okay, so save and then close. If you do save as, it's going to duplicate it again and not bring that image back into Lightroom. So make sure that you do save and then close. So when we get back to Lightroom, right, now here's our new version. Let's see how compared to the other one. Let's see which one I did a better job. I think I did a better job on this one. So this is the one we just did today, and this is the one I did yesterday. See how the grass is sort of gigantic over here? And I did a better job of deleting some of these weeds and stuff. So the only thing that I would do to this one here is to maybe add a little edge vignette and call it done. So there you go. Yes, beginner photography course. Yes. All right. So we haven't done any Flora today. Let's take a look at some Flora. So we've done some lions, some cheetahs, some horses. Let's take a look at some flowers. All right, so I've got Stephanie, Mickey, Karen, Robert, Russ, Holly. Okay. So who of those group is here? Is Stephanie here today? Have we seen Stephanie? Rob wants me to do the mushrooms. The challenge with the mushroom, Rob, is that they're actually not the raw files. This is a TIFF, and it's been edited. So I'm going to have limited ability to edit this one, and it's a funky kind of color. So I'm not really sure what I can do with this one. Is that you on Facebook, Stephanie? It just comes through as Facebook user. So the mushrooms are challenging because they're not the raw files. Let's see. This one is going to be an easy one. So let me do this one in Lightroom, okay? Because this is Mickey's, and he asked about darkening or brightening the dark parts, okay? So this one here is a quick fix because it's exactly what I just did on the lion, okay? So shift, double click on the whites. Then I'm just going to bring the exposure up, which is going to affect midtones, okay? Now I'm just going to use my Alt-Option key to affect the sliders to make sure I'm not clipping anything, okay? We can do this dance, right? So increase exposure a little bit, lower the whites or the highlights to keep the clippings down, and then some black, right? Now you're not going to pick up any detail in this dark area here because it's completely black, right? Even if we open up the shadows, there's really nothing there. It's so underexposed. And this is a JPEG, but even if it was raw, you're not going to get any detail out of there. And to be honest, nor would I want detail there, right? If anything, I would actually retouch this out and leave it black and dark and very stark. Okay. So that's all I would do in terms of brightening this one, right? So 3 or 4 sliders and it's brightened up. Okay. The other thing that you can do, and I don't talk about this a lot in terms of Lightroom, but I actually did this myself on some of the Madeira images, is literally just hit auto right here under tone. Just hit auto and see what it comes up with. Okay. So that version is actually not bad either, but it looks a little bit flatter than what I had. So if anything, I would add a little bit more black back in and a little bit of white because it's kind of gone too far in terms of flatness. But it's a good starting point if you're not sure where to start. Okay. Let's see. Okay, so let's do Holly's. This is kind of a cool image too that Russ submitted. Let's see what Holly's got for flowers. So we've got these pink ones, and this one's kind of interesting. There's some sort of interesting light effect up here, and I know that Holly works with Luminar, so I'm going to take these directly to Luminar. I'm going to play with this one here. Now, if you want to go direct to Luminar with the raw file from Lightroom, you just have to go export and open source file. Likewise, if you're doing focus stacking or HDR merge, you can actually select multiple images now and take them to Luminar Neo. Right? Okay, so I'm going to open the raw file. Dale, is that like the Dale from the Luminar group, Dale? Nice to have you. She's a Lens Baby Omni Wand. Oh, interesting. I'm not familiar with that. Omni Wand. Interesting. Well, the reason I like this one is because there's some bokeh down the bottom here. So I thought we could play with that, as well as these streaks up here with like a sun rays filter as well. All right. So that's okay, Dale. We'll forgive you this time. But you missed the beginning part. Stick around because I'm gonna go over that again. I'm gonna show you some images that I took in Portugal with the Skylum team, and Skylum is gonna be here next week live. The CMO and the head engineer of the software will be here on my live stream next week. So you don't want to miss that, and you want to tell everybody in Coffee Break to come as well. So if you're on Coffee Break this week. All right, so what I want to do with this one, let's just see what any of these presets kind of do. Now we have preset previews, of course. Okay, so we can just click a collection, and then it will show us if we hover over. Ooh, that's kind of neat. So is that, because I'm looking for, is it giving me the color that I want? I can always adjust things like brightness, right? That's kind of nice. It's increasing the contrast and the punch a great deal. So that's kind of nice. I might warm it up a little bit, right? And that one's warmer. So I think I'm going to go with this one and then just warm it up a little bit. And we can also now dial down the effect of the preset. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to bring it down to about there. And then we'll just go to edit, okay? I am going to crop this one a little bit because I don't like this edge up at the top here. So let's see what Luminar thinks is composition AI in terms of cropping. Okay, so it's come in a little bit. Now, do I want to get rid of this one at the bottom is a question. That is a good question. I definitely want to get rid of that stuff at the top. And I think I want to keep this part on the side. So I'm going to go free crop form and keep this bit over here at the side. I like this little guy here. Or we could do what Luminar suggested and just leave this one here or end up cloning it out. Okay? So now we just have that. The other thing that I might do with composition is because the branch is almost, I forgot that I'm not on the screen. The other thing that I might do is because the branch is so straight across, I might tilt it a little bit. Okay, so when we're cropping, we can do a tilt. Okay, so if I go this way, so I'm looking to make the branch a little more diagonal. Okay, so that kind of helps, and that gets rid of this problem at the bottom as well. Okay, I wish I could keep more space here. So I'm gonna go free. I'm gonna come in so it's narrower. Then I'm going to tilt and keep the full width of the branches. I might come in a little bit more. So now I've solved both problems. Get rid of that, get rid of that, get rid of this bright spot over here, and I've tilted it so it's a little bit more diagonal. So now we have sort of this leading line with this bud here showing up on this lower third. Right? So I will tilt in cropping a fair bit. There we go. Okay, so that solved a lot of things already. Now let's go look at the edits that's been done here. Okay, so it looks like it's added smart contrast. I like to do curves. Now it's darkened the curve, but I want to make sure that I've got some black. Okay, so I'm going to tuck in on this edge of the graph a little bit. Oops, there we go. Okay. And if you want to make sure you're not getting any clipping, J on the keyboard. Okay, so this dance. I don't mind if the highlights are clipping, actually. Okay, so there's this dance. We don't have any black, which is okay. We'll keep it softer. Okay. But I am going to adjust the color here. Okay. Warm it up a little bit. Something like that. Okay, let's see what else it's done. Okay, so it's applying some positive structure. And I don't want that on the background. So I'm going to mask it. And I'm just going to use a radial gradient so that it's only giving structure to the actual flowers that I want it to go on. Like so. Okay, remember I said where it's red is where it's applying, so it's not applying on the flowers or on the leaves yet. I need to invert it. Okay, so I want the structure here, not on the background. Okay. And while I'm here, I'm going to copy this mask just in case I'm going to use it somewhere else. Okay, now we've got enhance. Okay, so it's lightening the background, and I'm not, so it thinks there's sky in here. I'm not crazy about that either. So I'm going to paste this mask in. So I want to keep the background a little bit softer. Okay. Now we've got a little bit of details. We could punch up some medium details, which works nicely on the plant. Again, we can mask it in. So see how copying, pasting that mask is really handy. I'm going to add a vignette. So take it darker, feather 0. And because we cropped it, this is something I talked about with Dima as well. Post-crop vignette, we want it. Right? Because we cropped, we have to bring the size in. And then I'm just going to adjust the subject like so. Like that. Okay, so now we've kind of done the basic edits, right? So our beginning and where we're at now. Now we can start to do some creative stuff. So if I want to add some more bokeh, we can add a bokeh overlay. Or if we want to add some sun rays, we can do that. Before I do that, I got to put my favorites back. I was making a screenshot for somebody else, and I needed all of everything back where it belonged. So I've taken my favorites out. So I've got to put my favorites back in. So my favorites are Mystical, Glow, Mood, Mystical, Glow, and Color Harmony. Those are my favorites. So I always make sure that they are up there. So if you're not sure how to do that, you just have to right-click on any one of the tools and then just add to your favorites. And then if you don't want it anymore, just right-click it and remove it from your favorites. Okay. Okay, so sun rays. All right, so to start, we need to add the amount. And we definitely want them to be warmer, like so. And probably not so many. Not so many, right? And then I need to place the center, right? So the center, I want it coming from maybe even off the image, okay? So you could bring it up higher. So it kind of matches like the streaks that are already there, okay? And I want the light hitting these leaves. Okay, so now I'm just going to use the randomizer, which is my favorite thing, and just sort of see what happens. Right, so I'm just kind of, you can click along the bar. Now that's kind of interesting. I like that idea, right? And we can even enhance it by changing the overall look, right? I kind of want the center of the thing even higher. So I'm going to make my image smaller and place this up as high as possible. Maybe over here. Really, there we go. Okay. Now Let's see what we do with randomizer. I want it to sort of hit the leaves. Oh, that looks good. I kind of like that one. Right? So we got the amount to play with. Look what's happening there. Okay. Still think I need fewer arrays. So play with the amount, random, position. I kind of wish I could rotate them as well. Another feature request. Maybe a little bit like that. Okay, I'm not going to play with this forever. Oh, that looks good. I'm not going to play with this forever. I just want it kind of soft like that. Now, the other thing I can do is fade it out at the top. So if I do a mask on this one and a gradient, okay, so remember, red shows. I'm just going to fade it out ever so slightly at the top. Okay, so see, I got rid of that sort of harsh bit at the top. Okay. Now I can decide if I want more, have them more intense, and so on. Okay, so this is a great tool. I love this tool. I really do. Okay. Look at that. Look at that. I love this tool. Doesn't it look like the sun is really glowing on them? Well, it is. Okay, let's make it darker. Love it. Love it. Okay. And now let's do a bokeh. Okay, so she's already got some nice bokeh in the background. Okay. If you've purchased already my bokeh pack, if you could please put a link to the bokeh pack, Rob. We've got the ultimate bokeh pack. Okay. It is available on the Skyline Marketplace as well. He wants me to remove my thing. I don't know how to do that, Rob. There we go. How's that? Put a link to, let's see, what does Dale say? Put a link to our bokeh pack, please, on our website. Just for the record, I do not do Google, but I use old account just to see your session. Holly was always talking about. Yay! You can watch from Facebook as well, but it's better if you're here on YouTube, Dale. So I'm glad that you pushed through and that you're here. Like the effect of the rays. Would relight help to add depth? I don't think so. I'm not a huge fan of the relight tool, to be honest. Some feedback that I gave the team as well, because I find that it lights the foreground too much and not the subject. How are you finding a way to blend the original rays and the sun rays? I'm just adjusting the power or the opacity of the tool. And then, as you saw, I masked it a little bit as the top. Right? If that didn't answer your question, let me know. Okay, so I have a bunch of bokehs in here somewhere. And I think one of these yellow ones is going to work well. Probably this one. I've got a green one and a yellow one. So I'm going to add the yellow one because we've got sort of this yellow going on here. Hopefully I don't crash my computer. I'm going to close a few other apps that I've got. You don't need to see my notes. I'm going to close Photoshop because we don't need that open. So I'm taxing my computer. Oh, I've got another image, another version of Luminar open. That's the problem. Okay. So now I've got this bokeh added, okay, and I'm just going to stretch it to fit. And then I kind of want more on the bottom down here, right? And I'm not even sure that this is the right one, to be honest. Okay, so then you want to change the blend mode. Overlay is kind of cool. Overlay is kind of cool. Let's try soft light. Also kind of cool. So I'm not convinced this is the right one yet. So let me try the green one. Let's see. I've got some that are smaller as well. Let's try the green ones first. Right, now it's the wrong green, but we can fix that. Right, now I got to stretch it. I can also just do fill. Don't mind it stretched. Let's change the blend mode. Now that's kind of cool. Do we like where the bokehs are? I kind of want to fill this like empty space down here a little bit. Kind of like that. Okay. So I'm going to leave it like this at high opacity because I want to mask it a little bit. And I'm going to have it fade out at the top. Okay. So again, where the red is it's going to show fading out to none at the top. Right. See that? So I don't have any bokehs here. I might just erase this one as well. Okay. Kind of like this one over here. All right, now the color of it is not right. So I'm going to go into the color tool. There we are. And I'm going to shift the green more yellow to match. See that? So we can literally shift the color. Or you can use this tool at the bottom here to literally shift the entire image any color you want, right? So if I go this way, we're getting more yellow and green right off the bat. Okay. Like so. Right. The other option is I could even apply a LUT to it. So there's lots of ways to shift the color into something that's more matching this image. Okay. Now I'm happier with that. I'm going to come back up to layer properties and just soften it. I'm going to redo this mask because I'm not totally happy with it. So I'm going to do, I'm just going to do that. I'm just going to brush it out where I don't want it. That's easier. Okay, so I don't want this one up in this corner so much. And like so. Something like that. Okay, so now we have our before and after. We could also add a texture. We could also add a texture here if we like it. I'm going to get rid of this layer we don't want. Okay. Yeah, I've noticed that as well, Holly, that it becomes unresponsive. But the bigger issue for me is that I'm live streaming. So my computer is just completely taxed. So all of my memory and my RAM go into the video streaming. And so there's not a lot left for other things. Would a reverse structure work for softening the bokeh? Absolutely. Let's give that a go. Good suggestion. Okay, let's do that. There we go. So it just softens the edge. Yep. Good idea. Right. We could even use a glow. Right. So if we want to soften them a little bit more. Right. I could come back to this color tool and just lower the saturation a bit as well. There. How's that? How's that? I like it. This one at the bottom here is a little bright. So I'll just sort of mask it out. Excuse me. Coming up to an hour and a half and I start coughing. I want to darken this top again. I'm going to go back up here and I'm going to darken the exposure. I'm darkening this top of the image. So I'm just going to use a linear gradient. See that? So I use develop just to darken that top a little bit. Okay, now we can go back and do the dance, right? If I want more sun rays, okay. There we go. I'm quite happy with that. And we'll go back to Lightroom. All right, let's see. So yes, reverse structure looks good. I wish there was bokeh in the trees in real life. Well, it depends on the lens you use, the aperture you use, and also the angle that you shoot with, right? If you can get more stuff in the background that's got little bits of light hitting it, you'll get bokeh. Hey, Kelly, thanks for popping in. Added to a simple image, just added a little bit of something, a little something, something. Yes, exactly. Softening of the bokeh, calming down the colors is very effective. I usually find bokeh detracts from the subject. I like to add bokeh as something that, like if there's a reason to add, okay? Don't just add bokeh because you want to add bokeh, but because it adds to the image. And the image was fairly simplistic and there was already bokeh there, so we just added to it, right? But yes, we definitely want to keep it soft. The bottom conflicts with the branch. Let me take a look at that. While I am here, these are some of the images I actually shared on Facebook. And if you're in our Facebook group, maybe share a link to our Facebook group, Rob, as well. These are some of the images from Madeira. So this here is some of the team. This is Juliana on the left again. This fellow is Manny Ortiz. He runs a popular YouTube channel. And he was really nice. Everybody was super nice. We all got along great. This is Ruben. He runs a Spanish channel. And this is Peter, who runs NikonRumors.com. So everybody's got their thing. This was another one of the guys with us, Stefan. And I posted a 16 image HDR pano merge. Let me show you that. This one I did for him just as a HDR. Process that one here in Neo. And then some from this beach that we photographed on. So 3 mornings in a row, we were up at like 5 a.m., crack of dawn to go and photograph. What were you supposed to share? That's a good question. Our bokeh pack, and then somebody remind Rob what he was supposed to share. Up at the crack of dawn, doing photography, had lunch, and then we were out again for sunset. So this is one of the beaches that we photographed with these big boulders and the moss and the sun coming up. This fellow here on the left, if you've watched any webinars on our website, this is Pete Vandenine. So it was nice to meet him in person. We've done many webinars and things together. And it was great to hang out and photograph together. And he even said one morning, he's not a landscape photographer either. We're both portrait photographers. So this is very different kind of genre of photography for us to do. All right, so that was some of the images from there. Let me get back to the Lightroom. All right, and here's our little bush, okay? So if you find that this bokeh at the bottom here competes a little bit, right, we're back in Lightroom, we can still do any editing we want with it. So if I want to just do another little linear gradient, I can just bring the highlights of that one down a little bit here at the bottom, like so. How's that? How's that? Is that better, Stephanie? Our Facebook group. Thank you, Dale. Well, one of my tutoring students who was also studying with me portrait photography, I said I'm not a landscape photographer, and I shared some of the images, and she said, quotes, Darlene says I'm not a landscape photographer, and everybody else goes like this. So I'm not, though. I'm not a landscape photographer, and I don't want to do that kind of thing. I'm not a hiker. Ask Rob. Okay. Let's see. So, Marsha, if you are new, I'd like to welcome you. And I've got a cat coming to tell me that it's cat lunchtime. Yes, please come and join our group, Dale. We'd love to have you. Okay, so let me show you some of the images from Madeira. I actually did a quick collection so I could find them easier. There we go. This is my direct contact. Her name is Yasia. So she's in charge of working with ambassadors and partners, and I work with her quite closely. And this one is actually a Photoshop document. I combined 5 different images on this one. And the only difference is the splashes. So I combined them like light painting as layers and brought more splashes out. Right. So there's the combined one. And then you can see sort of the ones that I used to bring them all together. Right? We went to what's called the Fauna forest, thousands of year old trees. Amazing, amazing. And we got so lucky that the fog, excuse me, I seem to hit this hour and a half. The fog came in and out and gave us this amazing, mystical, magical forest. Another location. Every time we went somewhere, it was absolutely stunning. We're above the clouds. This one here, this is the Pano HDR. Okay, so let me show you how this is done. Okay, so these are the images I used to take it. So I shot vertical images from left to right, and each set of images is bracketed. Okay, so here's the far left image. Okay, you can see the brackets. Here's the next one. Now you'll notice that there's 5 of each set, but I only used 4 of them because I didn't use the brightest one. I didn't think I needed it. Okay, there's the next set. And that's the final one. Okay, so I combined 15 images. Sorry, 15 images combined, Rob. So it was a set of 3. Right? And then I did the same to combine there. You saw that one. Right? Photographers in the bush. Always wear red so people don't think they can see you. Just like hunters, right? This one, I did some funky things too as well. This was a long exposure. This one, 20 seconds. But on the beach, I did a much longer one, about 2 minutes. And yes, it was that windy. She's the Fuji rep. So her and I hit it off. We even have almost the same jacket. This one I did another panoramic of. So this is left to right. This time I did horizontal images. So left, middle, and then right. And this is what I came up with. So this is how I merged them together. So I merged all 3 of those together. And then I added a boat. I found another stock image and I put the boat in there because I wanted to create something really different. And I think I've achieved it. So this is different than what anybody else captured of that scene, right? And the local guy, Do Art, that we were working with, he even complimented me on this image, saying this is one of the most iconic, most photographed places on the island, and I've done something different. So I felt good about that. There's Pete again. So I did Pete, a little HDR. Again, we're up before the sun, above the clouds. Another HDR above the clouds. Right. So we had some great locations. This is Nick. He may be joining us on a future Skylum meeting with something else coming up. I can't tell you yet. But he's with Skylum team as well. And this is Jacob. If any of you follow Clever Photographer on his channel, that is Jacob from Clever Photographer. He's quite the character, I have to say. Him and one of the other fellows decided that it was my birthday one day at lunch. So every day they sang me happy birthday. So I said to them, every time you sing me a fake happy birthday, I get to take 1 year off. So I was happy with that. So this is what it looks like when a bunch of photographers get together. This is my XT1 old Fuji camera that I converted into infrared. And I took this one with me because I knew that I was going to be doing some landscape shooting and I wanted to capture that. So, infrared sees a different spectrum of light than what we see with our eyes, right? So, here we have actually the green leaves and the black or the blue sky. And in infrared, blue often comes out as black and green comes out as white. So, it added this really dreamy effect. Then add in the fog and the sun rays. I did not add sun rays here. This is what it looked like. This is the original image. If you don't believe me, I'll find the original for you. Right. This is another infrared, right, of the same forest, and you can see how dreamy it looks. Those are some of my infrared images. Any questions? Let's see. Do you have a preferred source of free transparent PNGs? No, I cut the boat out, so I added that one in Photoshop now, but I could have done it in Luminar as well. I just found one on Unsplash, and then I cut it out in and put it on as a layer. So Unsplash or Pixabay is another one that has lots of great free stock images, I guess. Thanks, Stephanie. Yeah, I mean, infrared is kind of magical. Aw, thanks, Sheila. You're so nice. Jacob sent you a Luminar mug. Well, aren't you lucky? Well, I sent you a Luminar hat. Mug envy. Yes, Sheila, I did take a tripod. As I mentioned, many of these, like these early morning ones, it's essential. The forest ones, we were walking around handheld. I also went to the garden. But for example, some of these ones here in the morning, if I go over to the folder, let me just get in here. So some of these ones in the morning, like this one, for example, is a 2-minute exposure. Okay, so you can see it's 120-second exposure. Definitely need a tripod. And the idea there is that the water turns into this, smoky kind of look. Looks like I kicked the tripod during the exposure. So it was very windy. So the tripod may have moved a little bit, actually. And the clouds move, right? I think I processed this one in Luminar. Yes, I did. So there's the finished version of that one. So definitely you need a tripod when you're doing landscape photography, partly because you want to use a smaller aperture. Like this is f20 and long exposures, and you want to get more of the scene in focus. And oftentimes you're using a long exposure, especially if you have water or clouds moving. Collecting goodies. Look at you collecting stuff. Did you get a Tamron jacket, Dale? I used to use Tamron when I had Canon, but I prefer Sigma lenses now. And as soon as we sign off here, I'm actually running over to the camera store, the local camera store, because they're having a little trade show and my Sigma rep is there. I do have the Sigma 56mm lens for my Fuji. So the green moss looks great. Yes, it is algae and it's very slippery. So I did not go clambering over the rocks too much because it was very slippery. Thanks so much, Dale. I can show you the original here and what I did to it actually, if you want. So there's the original. Okay, we saw that one in Lightroom. And luckily, of course, in Luminar, we have remove spots. So I generally shoot wide open. So I didn't know that I had these spots on my sensor. So I'm going to be cleaning my sensor because when you shoot with a smaller aperture like f20 like this, stuff shows up that you wouldn't otherwise see. So let's take a look at what I did. I did develop raw. I did some denoise, and I think the denoise was honestly just from a preset that I applied, so I don't really think I need it. I applied a preset and then I edited it. So then I did some structure and I masked it into only these parts. I wanted it on the rocks only because I wanted everything else smooth. And then I did the same here. Okay, so I enhanced the sky and the rocks, shifted the color a little bit. I played with the color a lot. I did some details, medium details, and once again, masked it in there. So I copied that mask so I could use it again. I did erase, of course, to remove the dust spots right there. That's all I did pretty much. And I think this is actually another photographer over here. If I zoom in, yeah, so this is another photographer. So I can actually just get rid of their screen. I'm just waiting for it to catch up to me here. Let's see. Let me erase this. Yes, I was very careful on the algae holly because I've already broken my leg in a foreign country once. So I've played that game. I don't need to do it again. Okay, so that's better. And there's a ghost of somebody's head here, it looks like, as well. See that? So that's like somebody's head, I think, because they moved during the exposure. So I'll get rid of those guys as well. So then I played with color harmony. This is one of my favorite tools, right? Look what it does here. It really punched up the green in the rocks here, right? See, I can take it even farther. Okay, maybe warm it up a little. And somebody said I had too much color, so I'll bring that down again. Looks like I removed that one, so I don't need it. Then I did super contrast, which is great for picking up detail in the highlights. And then I masked that to the sky, shifting some colors. I applied a LUT. This is one that was in the Freedom LUTs when they had those available to help Ukraine, and it has lots of orange in it, so I liked what it was doing there. I did a little dodge and burn, and that one here is just to darken the rocks at the bottom. Okay. And then, of course, ended off with Mystical. Okay. I might dial that back just a little bit. I was pretty happy with that one. Yes, indeed, I broke my leg in Colombia. Well, funny enough, it's not even a dangerous hobby because the hiking and the things that we did in Madeira were far more dangerous than how I broke my leg in Colombia, which is literally slipped on a wet floor in a bathroom. Rob has all kinds of great creative stories about that. But let me get back to Lightroom because I want to mention for everybody that's here still that the next live that we are doing is going to include the Skylum team. So, actually, that's not the one I wanted. Let's just do all of that. Okay, so we've got, let me just do this. There we go. We've got Luminar Neo, developer Dima is joining us, and CMO, so Chief Marketing Officer of Skylum, Juliana, is joining us next week here on the live stream. So make sure that you fill out the form and send the questions to them ahead of time. So I'm going to be collecting all of these and sending them the questions ahead of time so they know what to prepare in order to show you and answer all of your questions. So you can ask about the company, the state in the Ukraine, where everybody's at. You can ask about future thought processes on things, anything like that, okay? So I'm going to be collating the questions, and depending on how many we get, we may not be able to do all of the questions, but we're going to do as many as we can. And I'm so grateful for them for joining us. This is something, like I said, that you don't get Adobe joining, somebody like me on their YouTube channel. So I'm really grateful for the relationship building that Skylum really values, and that's something that I value as well. And meeting in person, if you have a chance to attend any of their workshops, Iceland or any of the others that are coming up. We talked about a few locations, and I suggested places like Scotland, like Isle of Skye, as well. So who knows what they're going to come up with next. And maybe I will see you on an adventure. Hashtag Luminar Adventures. Okay, so if you want to see more of the pictures on Instagram, actually, I will just give you that one because they did have a hashtag for it. And any of the people that went on Iceland and also all of us that went to Madeira are using that hashtag. So you'll be able to see specifically Instagram and some of the other social media platforms, some of the images from the Luminar excursions. I agree, Dale. I mean, it's one of the things that I love about them because they regularly have meetings with us as the partners, as customers. You have the insiders group and the coffee breaks. So it's a really, really great relationship, I think. Right. So come back next week. Now that you're here, Dale, you've got your membership. Come back next week and submit your questions for Julia and Dima. And I will be excited to welcome them to all of you next week right here on the channel. Please share the link with everybody in terms of questions and also to attend the live. Bookmark that page, and anytime you're not wondering if there's going to be a live or when there's going to be a live, you'll see it scheduled and it'll tell you, how many days and hours until the next one. So that link is always good. You don't have to worry about finding it. So bookmark that and fill in the form. This one, Rob, if you could put a link to that form again, please, so that they can just click it from here. If you are on my email list, I'm going to be sending this out as well and sharing it in the Facebook group. So you heard it here first. Come back next week for the Skylum team members exclusive live with me here on Digital Photo Mentor. Thanks everybody for joining. It's been wonderful. I'm glad to be back. Not only from Madeira, I need a holiday for my holiday, but I'm glad to be back here with you on YouTube. Take care, and I hope to see you and your friends, bring your friends, next week. See you then.